Shea Theodore has a new deal in Vegas, plus some teams are having remarkable early success. Then we look at the goaltending narratives starting to emerge, including a surprise in Pittsburgh. We've got all that and the weekend ahead of NHL games on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone. And thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm here every week with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. How are you, Gil?
Doing okay, Rachel. It's Friday. We got a lot of hockey coming up this weekend, and the season is starting to take shape.
It really is. Shea Theodore is probably having a good day, too. He got his extension this week, and the AAV on it, 7.425. Can't really complain about that running through the 2031 to 32 season. And the thing with Theodore that's so interesting to me and really cool is that, well, first off, he was going to be a UFA next summer, and to get this done now is a really good thing. But with Vegas, we know their short history, they have no loyalty to anybody, right? Anybody. And there were some questions as to whether or not he would stick around. But, he's like one of the original OGs of Vegas. And the fact that he has stuck around this whole time, I think it's a huge deal.
It is a huge deal. And it's good to have some continuity and to lock up one of your better players. The only kind of reservation I have looking at this, you got a 7-year extension on a guy who's 29 years old now. Year 4, 5, 6, 7 of this extension, you get the feeling that what the Vegas Golden Knights will get in return will be a player whose skills are probably starting to decline.
I honestly think that's just the price of doing business these days. I mean, whose contract, other than a select few, would you not say that about? You look at their last couple of years, anybody that gets a deal that's 6, 7, 8 years, you're going to say that about for the most part. Again, rare exceptions. I think Connor McDavid, you're going to be fine, right? Not going to make that observation for him. But I think, when that deal happens, but I just think to have at least some sort of franchise consistency for Vegas is important, because they can point a finger at him and say, see, we're not bad. We don't dump players. Look at this man. And I think he brings some stability to the team. I think, he's a really impactful player, especially in the playoffs. Was a huge part of the Stanley Cup that they won. And so I think it's really good for him. It's really good for the team.
No, there are definitely benefits for it. And again, I like the continuity. I like Theodore as a player.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the back half of this deal is not going to be as team friendly as it is player friendly.
Listen, if you're the Vegas Golden Knights or you're a Vegas Golden Knights fan and you're worried about that, how many times have they gotten out from the cap?
Oh.
Would you honestly worry that they wouldn't figure out a way to make
whether they place them on LTIR with a stub toe or whether they find a way, they find a way.
So again, I'm just not worried. I think it's good. I think it's good for everybody here. And like I said, they'll figure out a way to manage it if it comes to it later in the deal. Of that, I have no doubt. Looking at a couple of maybe surprising teams this season so far in a good way. And I say maybe surprising because the first team, the Winnipeg Jets, they are still undefeated right now. They are a very good team. They were a very good team last year. I think that, for that team to basically pick up where they left off from the end of last regular season into this season. Honestly, I think it's really remarkable. And I think, good for them. And they're certainly, at least so far, proving me wrong that I thought maybe they would fall off a little bit from last year's success.
Yeah, no, I mean 7-0 right now, a plus 18 goal differential. They're giving up less than 2 goals a game, winning at home, winning on the road. Such an impressive start to this season for the Winnipeg Jets. And I think a big part of it comes down to when you have one of the best, if not the best goalie in the game in Connor Hellebuck. That's the foundation stone for your team. And they really have built this team around Hellebuck, and they are playing some great hockey so far early in the season.
Yeah, and I think that, they are getting like a tremendous amount of scoring, which is,
Yeah,
you know, that's the part of it for me that's been so amazing to watch, is that when you're averaging almost 4.5 goals a game, like that is impressive and a very difficult thing to do. Now, again, 7 games in, it's not, a huge amount of data, but it's starting to, at least you can start to look at some early patterns here. And whether or not this is sustainable is still to be determined, but they're still getting the points
yeah,
early on, and
they
those,
count.
they count the same. So
Right.
I think that's cool. I think the other team, looking at the East, is the Washington Capitals. I think, most people would have said this is a year they missed the playoffs, or they're battling, but they're going to miss the playoffs this year. Right now, the Caps are sitting at 5-1, 6 games in, and they also are scoring over 4 goals a game on average. And it's not Ovi really that's
No,
doing it. Like, I would say one of the most impressive players on that team thus far is Connor McMichael. I think he's off to a really good start. But I just am very impressed, especially with the team discipline they have structurally. Like, defensively, they are very difficult to play against. And they are, they do have 3 goals against per game, which is a little high, but they're finding ways to win.
they are. And, if I would have told you that Tom Wilson would start the
Ugh,
season with 5 goals in the team's first 6 games, I don't know how many people would have signed up for that. He's off to a really good start and only 4 penalty minutes in those 6 games. Wilson's been scoring.
well,
Dylan Strome has played exceptionally well. And, like you said, Ovechkin, only 2 goals through the first 6 games. The power play is not hitting on all cylinders yet,
nope.
but the Capitals are finding a way.
They are, and so I think when you're a team that is likely to be battling for a playoff spot at the end of the season, getting these points early on is gonna be a really huge factor in that, and teams that lose to them early on are gonna have some regrets looking back on the early season. So, I think those are 2 teams that have been a lot of fun to watch this early in the season. I think, one of the other interesting teams that the Caps might be battling with is the New Jersey Devils, and they're kind of where they are despite themselves in a lot of ways. Just from the standings perspective, they're up there, but they've had a lot of injuries. These guys are coming back, but they haven't like won a lot in the last few games. Like, they're on a losing streak here. So they started off really hot, lost a few games. Guys are coming back from injury. Will that stabilize things, Gil?
Yeah, you would think getting the guys back from injury will help, and yet they've lost 3 in a row, and they've given up 6 goals, 8 goals, 5 goals in those three
Mhm.
games. Defense seems to be the bigger problem right now for the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, so that's gonna be something to keep an eye on, especially, when you look at Luke Hughes coming back into the lineup. Will that have an effect on their defensive play? It should, in
It
theory,
should.
but that's something that we'll definitely be watching over the next little bit. Want to mention the Four Nations jersey reveal and how you think these particular looks are. You know, I think that looking at them, it's hard to say, you know, if they are innovative or just kind of what we're used to. I feel like there's a lot of, you know, consistency amongst these kind of teams and how their jerseys look, and it's hard to monkey with that. But what do you think?
Yeah, they are consistent. I think they are very familiar. I think they look good, though. I mean,
Hmm.
Canada's look may be the freshest of the four. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's classic Sweden, classic Finland, classic USA with only a few minor variations, and then even Canada. It's very familiar when you look at it quickly. You know exactly what you're looking at, but I think they all look good.
Yeah, the one thing about the Finland jersey that I appreciate is that there's a little bit of balance between like the Somi and the crest as opposed to it being one or the other.
Right.
And I think that, having a little bit of that balance is a little bit fresh and different for them. But very excited for this tournament, honestly. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's like skepticism about it, but I think it will be fun.
No, looking forward to it. And look, whether it works or it doesn't, I give the NHL credit for trying something different because let's face it, it's not just in hockey, but in all four major North American sports. All-star games are not the same.
They aren't. All right. There are also some early narratives starting to take shape about goaltending around the NHL. And we are going to dig into some of that coming up next. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks is the best way to win this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as little as 15 minutes. Download the app today and use the code Locked On NHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On NHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. PrizePicks, run your game. All right. So, looking at some early goaltending narratives, Sergei Bobrovsky just became the fastest goaltender to get to 400 wins in NHL history. And I think, in some respects, it's a truly remarkable accomplishment given like the trajectory that he took in terms of, moving. This is like his third team, right? So I think that's a really interesting factor there. But I also think there's something to be said for him having gotten a much earlier start in the NHL than he would have otherwise because the Flyers goaltending situation with Brizgalov was kind of a mess when he got his shot, right? So I think that he started much younger than some goaltenders would. So he's had a little bit of a head start. Not negating the accomplishment. I think it's really cool. And I think he's a fantastic goaltender. I just think like he got a little bit of a help there.
Yeah, look, the things broke right for him to get started,
Mhm.
but at the same time, to do
He
it
went in with it.
quicker. He was ready. I mean, the
Yep.
fact is he got an opportunity, he was fortunate, but he was able to take advantage of it. And he hasn't always played for the best teams over the course of his
Yeah.
career. So, I give him a lot of credit.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's kind of the second half of it, right? That, he spent a lot of time in Columbus, which was, a real challenge, I think, for him. And he kept them in games that they should not have been in. for a lot of it. And then he got, this really tremendous opportunity in Florida and went to a Stanley Cup, and was deep into the playoffs multiple years and was able to play well. And so I think, like, if you were gonna come up with a goaltender that would break this record, or get to 400 wins faster, I honestly think you would think of him right away, just simply because it feels like he's been around forever, but he's not even that old in
Yeah.
the scheme of things.
Which again, getting started younger helps in that regard. But he has been consistently really, really good for a long time, and to get to 400 wins, you need to be consistently good. If you're listing the top 5 goalies in the league for the last 5 years, he's got to be at or near the top of the list.
Yeah, I think so as well. Somebody who would not be near the top of that list, who's run into just some real troubles here, is Tristan Jarry from the Pittsburgh Penguins, who hasn't played in 9 days. The last game he played, he was pulled after letting in 3 goals on 5 shots against Buffalo on October 16th. And he recently got sent home basically to get some extra coaching and off ice time, and get it together a little bit. Like, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, right now he's got a 5.47 goals against average and 836 save percentage. Jarry has not been consistent. He has been at times able to carry the Penguins for 2-3 weeks, and then there are periods where he absolutely implodes. And I get the feeling this is more psychological than it is physical. And taking a step back and working with the goalie coaches and kind of regrouping a little bit may be a very, very wise move. But boy, the Penguins just signed him to an extension. What was it, a year ago? He's got a lot of time left on this deal. They need him to be back to being a quality NHL goalie if they hope to make a run for the playoffs.
Yeah, and you look at the Pens' other goaltenders. Blomqvist is doing okay, I guess. His save percentage is good. It's above 900. Goals against at 3.16 in 4 games played. But again, he's a younger guy. He was just only drafted 4 years ago. So, 22 years old. This is kind of when goaltenders would get their start or be close to getting their start. And that's where he is right now. So you can't really put a lot on his shoulders for the Penguins at the moment. Alex Nedeljkovic had been hurt, and he was down with Wilkes-Barre Scranton for conditioning. And I ironically watched the one game he played in Wilkes-Barre Scranton because they were playing the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, the Flyers affiliate. And so he had 33 saves and 36 shots in that game in the AHL. Real solid performance. But because of all of this going on, they had to call him up right away. Like, he only got that one conditioning game. He's played 2 games since then. And, he's done fine. It's just, like, I wouldn't say great. But it's been, really tough for him. He had 3 goals against in his most recent start, 5 goals against in the start before that. But the Pens are in a real goaltending quandary right now.
Yeah, they are, and they can't afford to be. That's the other thing. I mean, the Metropolitan Division is very competitive. They're 3-4-1 so far in their first 8 games, but they've given up 35 goals in those 8 games, and over the long run, that's not going to get it done.
It is not. On the other end of the spectrum, though, there's some really interesting goaltenders that are, emerging at the top of the stats right now. And, you know, if you had asked me, who would have the highest save percentage in the NHL right now, on just regular shots on goal, would not have guessed Alex Lyon. I'll tell you that.
No, I got to see him earlier this week when the Red Wings shut out the Islanders, and he earned the shutout and played very, very well. And, to have a 955 save percentage in 3 starts, 4 overall games, he's playing the angles well. He seems very confident right now. And look, we've seen him before on a hot streak help a Florida Panthers team barely squeak into the playoffs, and then they went on that long run.
Yeah, having seen Alex Lyon play in the Flyers organization, he is that guy. Like, he will come through in the clutch when you need him. I think he's not like somebody that you play for 50, 55 games in a season. He's like a 35 to 40 games uh, kind of goaltender, I think, when all is said and done. Because when he gets kind of tired, he's very tired. And you can see that. But I think that if you use him correctly, like I think Florida did that year, he can be an unbelievable asset to your team in that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if he's your backup playing 35 to 40 games a year, if he's your 1B, he can be one of the best
Yeah,
backups, if not the best in the league.
absolutely. Looking at somebody else is Philip Gustafson on the Minnesota Wild. First of all, goalie goal, love that, absolutely love that. But if you kind of tweak the stat a little bit and you look at save percentage on unblocked shots in 5 games played, he's at 979. So he is seeing the puck better than anybody in the league, and I think that is. I just think that's really impressive.
Yeah, and a 952 save percentage overall, 1.40 goals against average. And I'll say this, Gustafson does not get as much respect as perhaps he deserves playing for the Minnesota Wild. He's off
Yeah,
to a 4-0-1 start, and the Wild quietly has yet to lose in regulation. But I think because Winnipeg is perfect so far this year,
right.
they're not getting as much attention.
Yep, I think so. But yeah, some really interesting guys like rising to being like the cream of the crop here with goaltenders early on. Definitely something we'll keep an eye on to see if they can stay consistent for the next stretch of the season. Speaking of the next stretch, we've got a full weekend ahead of games, including a very busy Saturday to talk about. And we will do that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you could check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And this is a great time of year, so much to bet on. You've got the World Series getting started this weekend, pro and college football in full swing. Hockey fans, check out the odds for your favorite team this weekend on FanDuel. Use your knowledge of hockey to place some really exciting bets. Again, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Check out FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book.
As I said, there is a huge schedule on Saturday. It's not quite the frozen frenzy we had earlier in the week with everybody playing, but 28 of the NHL teams are playing on Saturday. So not only is that an amazing busy day of games, but it does mean that quite a number of teams will have back-to-backs, whether they're playing on Friday or they're playing on Sunday. So I think that's something to keep an eye out for how these teams do in their Saturday and Sunday games, depending how it goes. We were just talking about the Penguins and their goaltending issues. Well, they're walking straight into Edmonton, which man, I think
Yeah,
Edmonton has had their struggles, but this is a really good chance for Edmonton to get one, right?
you would think, Nedeljkovic already has his hands full, and now it's McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman, and yeah, that is not going to be an easy thing. And boy, the Oilers need a get well game, so
Yep.
we'll see if they can pull that off at home against the Penguins tonight.
Yeah, and your Islanders are facing the New Jersey Devils, who we also talked about on today's show.
Yeah, Devils are getting healthy but struggling, and the Islanders, they lost Anthony Duclair for 4 to 6 weeks, been shut out 3 times in their last 6 games. You got a shaky defense against a non-existent offense. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued, honestly, by this Predators Blackhawks game because I think the Preds are off to a rocky start, to say the least. They're 1-5 right now, and so playing the Blackhawks on the road is going to be a difficult thing to do, but also maybe like a blessing in disguise that they can kind of settle things in this game and kind of start turning things around. Saturday, the action starts at 1 p.m. Eastern for the day with a couple of games. The Detroit Red Wings will be facing the Buffalo Sabres. And despite the fact that Detroit has a better record, I feel like these two teams are kind of on even footing. And I feel like this will be actually a really good indicator game for both teams.
Yeah, these are two teams that are sort of have been just on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs in recent years, and everybody's waiting for them to take that last step. So here's a litmus test. Go out against one of the teams in a similar situation that you're in and show that you're the better one of those two teams.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Can you tell my sarcasm for the aforementioned Minnesota Wild with their fantastic goaltender to go up against the Flyers who can't score. So that should be
Challenge ahead, yeah.
they did actually get some goals on the last game against Washington. So we'll see if they can carry that through, but it will be a tough assignment for sure on Saturday afternoon. Always a big game when the Toronto Maple Leafs go to Boston. And I think these are another, I would say, at a slightly higher level than the Red Wings and the Sabres, but two teams in a similar boat that have a lot to prove.
Lot to prove and not off to the starts they wanted to be off to. One of these teams is going to start getting things right. We'll see which one it is.
Yeah, I think so. And then one of the more interesting matchups in the evening at 7 Eastern, the Winnipeg Jets, who are 7-0, still going up against a pun intended hot Calgary Flames team here. And Calgary, I think, is one of the surprise teams. We didn't talk about them earlier, but they have been off to a very good start. But is this when they're going to kind of run into a brick wall?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, something's got to give, right? You have a 7-0 team against a 5-1-1 team. Calgary been a very pleasant surprise. They're at home. This is going to be this is a great game to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely, this one jumped out at me right away. I think that looking at one of the back-to-back situations, the Nashville Predators, we talked about the fact that they're playing on Friday. Then they got to play at home against Columbus, who I think, they're 3-3, but I think it's a good 3-3 and not a bad 3-3. And, is this a game that if they win could kind of change the trajectory or continue the trajectory in a good way for Columbus?
Yeah, talk about a team that's been through a lot of adversity before the season even started. Obviously, the tragic passing of Johnny Gaudreau, injuries to some more of their key players. And yet here they are at NHL 500 where, expectations were very low. Nashville, I am not as worried about them as their record indicates. A lot of new faces there. I think they will figure it out once they gel a little bit more.
Yeah, of the late games, of course, we are on San Jose Sharks win watch. They have not won a game yet, and they are walking straight into Vegas to face the Golden Knights. Again, this is going to be a tough one for them to get that win at, but I don't know. Anything can happen in Vegas.
Yeah, but will it? That's
Right.
that's the big question. San Jose Sharks, did they win in October last year? I don't think they did.
No, not till November.
Yeah, been a long, long drought in October, and they're running out of chances to end that drought this year.
Yeah, and I think like the word on them this year is that there are a lot of individual pieces and not a whole. And that's what's happening here with them, that they can't put it together as a team, even though they do have some individuals who are playing pretty well, in a vacuum, but like it's a team sport. So, oh, San Jose, hopefully they
Need
can
more
get it.
cohesiveness, no doubt.
Yeah. And then on Sunday, I think, the game to watch will be, for me at least, the Ducks going into the Prudential Center to face the New Jersey Devils. And, the Devils got lucky and that they're not in the back-to-back situation. They're one of the few teams that didn't play on Saturday, and the Ducks did play. They're playing at Madison Square Garden and then going straight over the river to New Jersey, who is again starting to get their footing. But the Ducks have a good record so far. So, I think it'll be an interesting battle.
Yeah, the Ducks are surprising people at 3-2-1 right now on the year, and they're quietly kind of getting it done. And boy, Troy Terry off to a nice start. 4 goals
Mhm.
in 6 games.
Yep, yep, I think so. And I think the Senators in Colorado is also going to be an interesting matchup, just because Colorado got off to a rough start. The Sens I think, are playing better than they are at the moment. And so, where is that on the trajectory for each of these teams? And obviously, playing at altitude is never easy.
No, big test for Ottawa if they want to prove they're for real.
Yep. Yep. All right, that will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. Gil, of course, will be back on Monday talking to hosts from around the Locked On NHL network about what's going on with their teams. The two of us will be back next Friday to recap the week that was and look ahead to next weekend's slate of games. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On NHL Fantasy podcast, where Steal and Flip give you all the latest information you need to make your fantasy team all a success. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.